This week, the end of a love story. My 11-year affair with AT&T is over.
Then, the Kylie Jenner rocket ship. What does it mean for the future of commerce? Or is it work or social media? Steve and I will debate that.
And the summer of the VC. We'll explore some deals that matter.
I'm Gene DeRose.
And I'm Steve Rosenbaum, and this is Future Forward. Let's launch. So Gene, I just got to say, just to start out, last week we did our summer camp, and we had our biggest audience ever. People seem to like going to camp with us.
I don't think it means we're actors, but it definitely is an interesting way to take things, and got funky but kind of enjoyable feedback. Good midsummer episode.
All right, so before we get to our three big chapters of the day, we're going to do loving and hating, and do we want to start with loving or hating?
I feel like I got to return to loving because that's the approach. It's only when I'm boiling over too much do we start with hating and then only retrospectively love something. This week I'm loving the blockchain, and it's a kind of funny thing to be loving because it's been so raked and pounded through the press and the vibes, mostly connected to the relative price of Bitcoin and its competitive coin representations. But here's the thing. It's partly incidental. I'm doing a little bit of work and looking hard at some of the so-called ICOs, initial coin offerings that have raised a lot of money but have been filled with a lot of scams. And what it is really is this, and it's not news to deep tech people, but I think the rest of the world might want to understand. You know, the relative fluctuations of Bitcoin and the tulip mania, that's kind of nonsense, even though it probably is still a good investment as far as I can tell. But what the blockchain represents and what it is actually starting to pretty quickly become is really interesting. And it's not just for decentralizing and helping deal with the relative security of payments and commerce. It represents a new way to use kind of this distributive accounting that can be brought to marketing, and especially I'm excited about the potential for media. I didn't realize how many possible micropayments make the world equal businesses are out there that might give YouTube a scare, and none of them are going to necessarily be YouTube, but it's an interesting kind of time for that, and I think the dust has settled and people are like moving on it. Any point of view?
So De Silva Phillips, where I'm a senior advisor, did an entire day-long event about blockchain, and I went in cautiously suspicious and came out really a believer. They brought really smart people in. In the comments I'll put the link to the panels, and came away thinking I understood it better and I'd gotten away from some of the noise. And so I think I'd put that in my loving category as well.
Yeah, and look, this is not news. So a lot of people that are smart about it have said, let me refer you to something I wrote 3 years ago. It's just continuing to be true despite what the skeptics say. So we can move on. As the counter, easy one. I'm hating banks this week, and part of it is because of mulling and brooding blockchain and payments and seeing the inevitable bureaucratic pushback matched by hedging bets just in case they're wrong and making sure they might own a piece of it. But, I just think banks might be even worse than telephone companies or ISP kinds of companies in terms of sitting on a consumer front end inevitability for 20 years and doing next to little to none innovation, dragging their feet on things that should be so easy and obvious, and just, not making the world easier for us in any way other than, holding their nose while they're doing it. So yeah. I don't know. Do you like any of the banks in terms of what their consumer offerings are?
No.
It's too easy. I know. I might have mailed in this one for the summer. Let's get our way to the hard stuff.
All right. So I want to tell you my AT&T story. I wrote it for Media Post, but I really want to have a little bit of a conversation about it. And the important thing, and maybe the place to start, is to remember that 11 years ago, Steve Jobs did a ruthlessly brilliant deal with then this fakakta little third runner-up wireless company, AT&T. The name AT&T has been recycled a bunch of times and repackaged a bunch of times. And when Jobs did his deal with Steve Stephenson, it was essentially and you may not remember this because people forget, AT&T had exclusive rights to the iPhone. Not for 1 year, not for 2 years, but for 3 years.
Yeah, that's a decade in internet time.
Right?
That's insane.
And each year he got, Jobs went, it was 1 year jumps. And each year he got a little more, and he got more control, and he got to control what software was loaded, and he got all these things that other phone. He essentially took the power from the phone company to the device. And I, having been with, I guess, Verizon, I don't quite remember, shifted over because I wanted an iPhone. And by the time they lost their exclusivity, which was 3 years or so in, I was an AT&T customer, and I was kind of like, it worked exactly the way both Stephenson and Jobs wanted it to. I stayed with AT&T for 11 years. So
I'm still with them.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So about 3 weeks ago, my bill just kept going up in little hops. And it went up, and then it went up again, and I kept getting these little text messages. We're charging you another this. We're charging you for that. So finally, I was like, all right, I'm going to call in. And I've done this for a long time. There's a dance you do with wireless providers where you say, hey, I want to cancel, and they send you to a customer retention person, and they give you something back, and they apologize. This dance, right?
Yeah, of course.
So something has changed at AT&T. When I called in and said, look, you can't keep raising my prices, I could hear in the tone of the operator, they had nothing in their bag of tricks. Nothing.
Right. Did they not care, or did they just, was something amiss in how they're trying to grapple with keeping a customer? Sometimes these things they let go because, whatever, let the deal go.
So I have a theory, and some of our listeners may chime in here and have different opinions, but, if I said to you, you're going to go and buy a house, and it's going to be 4 times what you can afford. Like, it's going to be an order of magnitude more expensive than your income covers. You would do a budget where you'd say, all right, I'm gonna trim back on going out. You would do this very careful budget about all the things where you're going to save and you're going to increase revenue to try and cover the mortgage payment. And AT&T has had a year to plan for how they're going to pay for the $85 billion acquisition of Time Warner. And, it's important to remember that AT&T, just like any other company, like that $85 billion doesn't just magically appear in their bank account. So they've done super complicated, they said we're going to increase this fee by 3 points, and we're going to move this, and we're going to retain customers, or we're not going to do give back. They've come up with a spreadsheet to beat all spreadsheets of how they're going to make that $85 billion interest payment.
Yeah.
And it includes, starting the day the deal closed, you cannot buy an AT&T wireless plan without video.
Oh, boy, I did not know that. I mean, I knew it from what you wrote and everything, but that's...
So I have a whole video setup in my house. I don't need AT&T video. I don't want to. And so when I said to the operator, look, just give me a plan where I pay you to be a wireless provider, which is what I want you to be, she essentially said, yeah, we don't do that anymore. We have the unlimited plan, the ultra unlimited plan, and the uber goober unlimited plan, none of which are unlimited, by the way.
Right. Yeah. How are they managing corporate accounts? Because people don't have... They must have figured out a way to pull that out, because we're not.
But my corporate discount went away.
Right, but I just mean people are not going to be using their corporate account to sign up for video to the home. Like, I don't even understand. Like,
it's video to the. So again, I'm making some assumptions here, but essentially they said net. Video is going to go to the phone, and the home's going to be packaged in, and we own all these assets. We own the Time Warner assets. We own the DirecTV assets. We are literally going to bundle them together, and no more Mr. Nice Guy. We're telling you it's free, so what's the big deal? Hey, it's free, except your price just went up, so it's really not free. Right,
and we're locking you in, and we have things we want to leverage, and you can't decouple or de-triple the old triple play anymore.
Nope. Now,
well, look, there's two things. One is what it does to you personally, and why you would drop it, and it kind of becomes clear and self-evident as you explained it. I'm wondering why that's smart by them, though. Like, I get that when some of these moves are sinisterly, and yet you can't blame them because it's going to improve their economics. I'm not sure I'm buying that here.
well, I think that in order to justify the, so again, put yourself in, Stevenson's the interesting character here, right? I mean, Stephenson, he lived through the Jobs era. He rode that thing all the way up to the top. He believes the future of AT&T is in video. And I think that internally they've done the math and said, look, we're going to lose some customers. Now, interestingly, Verizon, who did a nice deal for me, but there isn't that we'll give you any, like, they're not trying to steal customers back and forth in the same way. I mean, I got a little bit of a give back and a little bit of a phone thing, but it didn't have that ruthless, we're going to give you a ton of cash to steal you. And so AT&T and Verizon know that they're not going to eat each other's lunch. And at the end of the day, Verizon's not a video company. And, we talked about that last week. I mean, their new CEO is a 5G guy. But the thing that I found surprising was, and I dealt with 3 different retention people at AT&T. In each case, they absolutely lied to me. I mean, flat out lied to me. Said, oh, no, we're lowering your price. And then I looked at my deal, and they had increased my price 3 times.
Look, I know we have to move on, but we might put a pin in for the future to look into, or what. There must be a calculation about losing, by definition, some significant double-figure percentage of their existing customers on this, because people will just not. Now, maybe it has to do with when you come up for renewal or whatever, so it's gradual, or does it hit right away? Like, we're not gonna get hit by it tomorrow. Like, I don't think I've heard about this.
Well, your price went up. I mean, they raised the service fee from 99 cents a month to $2 a month on all your accounts.
Right, but what I'm saying is that, I'm still probably someday going to kick them off, but I've got Fios on the other end for my video related, home related ISP stuff, and so all I was trying to get to the ripple implications, because if something like that happens and it's a cost that they're willing to pay because of the over the top and unplugging inevitability that's happening around TV and set-top box services to the home, there's some people that are going to be left out in the cold. Not many of us are going to give up our HBO, and we've got the Netflix and everything else, but there's certain local things, certain sport things, and certain independent cable channels that are a little left out that, man.
No, meanwhile, I'm no fan of the Justice Department lost the whole battle over the AT&T Time Warner thing, but the fact that the Justice Department then came back and said, no, we're going to fight the merger. I mean, AT&T was already moving ahead as if it was a done deal, which it is a done deal, I guess. But the fact that the Justice Department is going to block it, or at least come out and fight this is not over. This is not over.
No, and it's a moving target. I'll also, and move on, is a lot of my video I receive through my wireless. It's just that I'm not watching it on the television or whatever else. Yep. So, like, it starts to become a little bit of a gray area, or a bunch of ways they're arbitrarily making distinctions that don't really exist. My biggest issue with my wireless bill the last 10 years has been teenagers into college, all the rich media that they're eating up that leads us to all these overages. I used to work out my own basic deal, but that pales compared to the extra 10 or 20 bucks for every 25th of the month bump that I have to suffer through. Yep. And that's video, or at least music or video.
Yep. And the unlimited plans theoretically get you away from those annoying little bumps.
And I'm fine with that. I made that move a few months ago, and it was a big deal. I got 2 more kids to move over to it, but still. It's void.
So one last thing here that just is worth keeping an eye on. At the end of the day, you're really seeing a sea change of who control, of how things are going to be billed and how they're going to charge for it, and who's going to get, at the end of the day, what AT&T is saying is, we don't want the cable company selling you channels that we now own. We
Right.
want to sell you the channels.
Right, right. And I actually think that points up something in the why of how the Justice Department, after 2 go-arounds, is still looking to put a schneid on things. And I sometimes we misthink these kind of antitrust-like things having to do with pure all-out monopoly, but it isn't just that. If a significant number of people are going to be negatively affected by captive situations, that's enough, right? Yeah. They don't have to own the whole world, but if 20% of the world is going to be completely screwed with no options, that's cause for shutting something down.
And by the way, they said in the court hearings, we absolutely are not going to do a price increase. They closed the deal, and the next day they did a $5 DirecTV price increase across the board. The next day. So the last thing I'll say is this. I talk to phone operators all the time. I've never heard the level of despair. Like, they clearly are being told, they're getting memos from the top down saying, give away nothing. I want one last story, and then we'll go. Yeah. So my son got called by the Tuvalu. My wife and I and my son all got calls from Tuvalu or some weird, or somewhere.
Alternative,
And when you called it back, you got hit with an overcharge. So my son got a $35 charge for calling this fake number. So when I called AT&T to fix it, they said, well, we can take it off your bill, but we're going to block him from ever calling overseas ever again.
That's crazy.
And I said, well, you understand it was a fraud. They said, yeah, absolutely. And we'll give you the $30 back. But I said, he has friends overseas. He might want to make legitimate calls. Nope. And you could hear in their voice, they were being given instructions to give away nothing. Anyway, so moving on.
It's
important. Pay attention. It's a big deal. It's going to change how TV is delivered. It's a big deal. Okay. Yeah. So now let's jump to our friend Kylie Jenner. Now, you pulled this story, so tell me why this is important.
Yeah, sure. And I in the intro I said, what does it mean for e-commerce and everything and social media and gig economy, and the proper way is what does it signify? And my point here is this, because my suggestion is that what we're looking at is a very major milestone that almost is akin to saying this is the first gig economy billionaire. And by that I mean, through social media and the evolution of marketing to this vast power of influence, you have individual practitioners able to cut out all the middle people and just basically sell their own product using these incredibly, massively scalable, but maybe only for a few, ways of reaching people. 2 or 3 years ago, when we talked about like the Kardashians or famous people or whatever else in the context of what was the beginning of influencer marketing that quickly became, by voodoo math, $1 billion, but a legitimate form of marketing, it was that, Kylie Jenner or one of her sisters or whomever would get paid $10,000 to mention Clairol in a tweet. That's incredible. But if you look at that in a snapshot and then you say, well, what if I owned Clairol? There must be a return on investment that's insane on that. So whether it was brilliant or a coincidence, her starting her own personal cosmetics company a few years ago is a direct connect the dots into this. And it's largely, if not exclusively, well, I'll amend that, driven by social media and digital marketing. To be sure, having a very popular reality show, is part of this. But I'd argue that's a sign of digital and social media starting to take over television, right? This is like, that's reality programming that our friend Josh Harris invented on the internet 20 years ago. So I just think it's really significant, and I call it gig economy because this is talking about, sure, Zuckerberg became a billionaire by running a company in a traditional way that brought a new phenomena. But we're talking about individuals being able to do incredible things with what social media and this whole kind of freelancer thing can do for you on the internet.
So I guess my suspicion though is, compare her, for example, to Martha Stewart.
Yep.
So Martha Stewart has a really long run. And even as she's become less the face of the brand has some karma around it. Do you really think that Kylie Jenner branded cosmetics are going to be here in 5 years?
No, this is not about substance. And I would say this, which is that it's a harbinger not of something tremendous so much. Well, I'll give her some credit. I don't want to take the credit away. This is something that has been done over the last 20 or 30 years using largely the traditional media. Oprah, Martha Stewart, plenty of people, a lot of male athletes through sponsorships and other kinds of things. It's just a sign that in a few short years you could do all that really rapidly through the internet with a very thin and narrow portfolio. Right? It's a sign of and it's a sign of the power, the spending and market power of 15 to 25-year-old, largely women.
Look, a couple of years ago, I went for the first time to VidCon, and it was literally like I'd taken a rocket ship and landed on Mars.
Right.
The relationship between the influencers and the fans was so palpable. And so, at that point, unknown by my fellow peers in the marketing world, I was I literally came away going, "Oh my God, the world has changed."
Yeah.
And you're not paying it. It was, it was everything from, So, and I think as I think about Kylie Jenner, that's the thing I'm reminded of, which is, people that are followers of her, people that watch her on Instagram and connect with her, their relationship with her is very different than their relationship with Revlon.
Right. And it can happen outside of our view, but the power and the intensity of it is so much. I mean, look, you and I, we've been through this. Back in the day, the numbers that mattered in terms of users used to be compared to running a one of 500 magazines, get yourself up to a few 100,000 or approach 1 million. It's a big deal. We're talking about fringe figures in the larger scope of things who've got 5 or 10 million followers, and that's nothing. We just let it blip by that Instagram hit 1 billion users. It's one thing for Facebook to hit those numbers, but so we're talking about something. There's a footnote to it that it's truly global as well. But again, it's about her, and I'll give her credit. But it's a signature of other things that we would be unwise to not see it as one of these sneak milestones akin to the emergence of Fortnite or something like that. All
right, so we got time for a couple of these VC transactions that I want to talk about.
Sure.
Let's start with the MediaMath transaction. So that's it's funny. It's the middle of the summer. People tend to be a little bit checked out. That's a big number that they've just raised.
It's a really big number, and it's got some. I'm intrigued by it because I like to sort of keep a special eye on what's going on in the New York, kind of side of things. But it's a real kind of bi-coastal. This is marketing and media. Silicon Valley and LA-based money are big in this, and Silver Lake. That's our old friend Roger. In the background, Roger McNamee.
So, what do you think they're gonna? It wasn't that long ago that people were saying, the era of roll-ups and acquisitions in ad tech was over. All the big transactions were done. Now he's got $180 million. Joe does, and he's going to buy some stuff. And any idea? Is he bottom feeding? Is he going to buy stuff that's fallen off the side of the?
Well, I think that's a big question. By the way, it's Spring Lake, so it's not Roger. It's not Silver Lake Equity Partners. So drop that one. Although Roger is everywhere. I think there's a big part. I think to the larger world. it's a little bit of a mystery what happens in this sort of marketing and advertising, not back end, not front end. Most people didn't even understand what AOL had built behind the scenes that amounted to this massive billion-dollar ad network that didn't have anything to do with the brand AOL. Look, it's a sign. It's just another sign of how big and powerful the medium and the category is. I think this, I think there's a little bit of a reemergence kind of ad tech here that's kind of secretly happening, even if this isn't as directly about that.
All right, so let's go to Greenhouse. So Greenhouse is another interesting one. So Greenhouse has been around for a while.
Yep.
I kind of understand it. It's a hiring platform. It's a filter for all these inbound resumes that are coming at companies.
Yep.
But they've got $110 million in the bank.
It's one of these categories that, again, I've wondered aloud, even here a bunch of times, about all the chipping away at the edges of what felt like LinkedIn owning all of recruiting and hiring and professional, your dashboard. And there are many other companies that are more directly connected, but this one potentially goes in the direction of some of the big executive recruiting guys. Not yet. That's a very kind of hand-holding exercise with C-level people. But there's so much money. If you look at the math of what people will pay for an important recruiting hire, generally the code used to be 15% of the first year's salary. And you just think about that math in the world of professionals, whether it's coders or C-level executives or money or marketing people, you're talking about a lot of money swishing around that, like the old travel agent industry, is ripe for disruption and more efficient. And so, I know I'm not speaking as directly to these guys, but I think the space has been waiting for this to happen.
Yeah. All right. So, and then maybe the last one we have time for. Yeah. Did you understand the? I don't even know if I know how to pronounce it. Constitial.
Cosential. I think it's cosential.
Cosential. Centralize your firm's business intelligence in the office and on the road.
Yeah, it's. I think I might have listened to an AZ podcast recently where they were talking about, I can't remember, it was something so kind of funny and obscure, but along the lines of how AI was going to disrupt the contracting and construction business. And look, I guess I would only say this because I can't claim I know shit about the category, but it's another one of these harbingers that's like the last one. There's so much loose, sloppy, crazy money, graft, things that don't show up on balance sheets flowing through a lot of those spaces that, like everything else, we may end up talking about Trump again if we're not careful here, because it doesn't, at a distance, it seems like it might have to do with some things that he's been an expert in over the years. But whatever, internet everywhere, that's about all I can say about it. And, JMI Equity, I will say this, they're the kind of